welcome Anthony Tennyson, CEO of Awakn Life Sciences. Anthony, thank you for joining us. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. It's a pleasure to speak to you and good to speak to your audience today.
It's a pleasure to have you with us, Anthony. Very excited to learn more about Awakn. Let's start off at a high level discussing the inception of Awakn Life Sciences, and more specifically, how does Awakn differentiate itself from other companies in this space?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's one I'm more than happy to answer. So the inception of Awakn Life Sciences, alcohol use disorder specifically and addiction in general affects and touches many, many people that we know. So myself and a few colleagues established Awakn Life Sciences to provide hope for individuals, families, and communities who are so devastated by addiction. And we provide that hope by researching, developing, and commercializing therapeutics to more effectively treat addiction. And the key things that set us apart are the significant market opportunity for what we do, our team, world leaders, punching significantly above our weight. You could kind of say our team is built for 5 years time, but executing successfully today. It's our data-driven science, and it's the significant opportunity to investors available today in Awakn, given the market dislocation.
Terrific. Okay, before we get on to the latest news that you guys have coming on after we've discussed the differentiators, it's worth us briefly discussing your phase 2B trial results from earlier this year, 2022. These are some groundbreaking results for people suffering from the alcohol use disorder, as you've already discussed a little bit. Tell us a little bit about those results. What can you give us that's of such significance here?
Yeah, I'm more than happy to. So alcohol use disorder, it affects 400 million people globally. The treatment gap is significant. It's about a 90% treatment gap. So that means essentially 90% of people with this disease either don't have treatment or the treatment they have is unsuccessful. What we've done is we have completed a phase 2AB clinical trial to develop new, more effective therapeutics to treat that disease. The people coming into that trial were sober 2% of the time. So that's 7 days a year they were sober. The rest of the time they weren't. The people then that went through the proprietary arm of that clinical trial, or the active arm of that clinical trial, they were sober 86% of the time in the 6 months post-treatment. And the really important thing here for us, whatever about the stats, when you get down to the individual, people who are sober 2% of the time, there's a 1 in 8 probability that they would die within the next 12 months. The significant reduction in drinking that we observed, or that was achieved by the trial, led to a reduction in that probability of fatality from 1 in 8 to 1 in 80. So that just paints the picture and shows the significant potential that we have to improve lives, but actually to save lives by developing and commercializing what we do. And so what we're doing with that trial is we're bringing that trial forward into a phase 3 trial in the UK in conjunction with the UK National Healthcare Service and the University of Exeter. And so the uniqueness of our business model actually enables us to treat people today in our clinics with ketamine-assisted therapy for alcohol use disorder that's been developed in that clinical trial in advance of securing marketing authorization. So we can, in the clinics, we can take what was developed in that clinical trial, we can make that groundbreaking and life-saving treatment available to people today in the UK. We can use that to gather the real-world evidence to support interactions with regulators and interactions with payers so that we can accelerate towards marketing authorization. So really, we're incredibly pleased with the results of that trial, but more importantly, we're actually really pleased that we're able to treat people today in our clinics with that methodology and with that therapeutic, earning revenue and helping people today.
Terrific. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the announcement you had last week where you completed the world's first study assessing pharmacological treatments for a range of behavioral addictions. Again, you've semi-mentioned this already, but what do the next steps look like to advance this into the next stage, and why is this so important? What is the significance and the impact we're going to see coming out of this?
Indeed, I'm more than happy to. We are targeting the brain circuits that house the behaviors that drive the addiction. Most people that develop therapeutics to treat addiction, they target an individual receptor site. And that works for some types of substance addictions. Driven by Professor David Nutt, who's our Chief Research Officer, who is a global authority in the area of addiction research. We are known to target the brain circuits that house those behaviors that drive the addiction. And that's what we call a polypharmacology approach. That enables us to develop therapeutics to treat both substance, but also behavioral addictions. And so what we set about doing in Q4 last year was we set about initiating the world's first studies to develop a pharmacological or a drug-based treatment for behavioral addictions. But we set about conducting the first study of its kind, and we tested whether or not ketamine can reduce the symptoms of those addictions. And we completed that study last week, and we announced the completion of that. And we're now just analyzing the data before we make some further announcements about what that means to us as a company with regard to our IP strategy and also next steps. And if that analysis is successful, or if the study was successful and the data proves to be as compelling as we believe it will be, what we'll do is we'll do a further deep dive into gambling disorder, probably between now and mid Q3. And if that's successful, we look to go straight into a phase 2B clinical trial for gambling disorder. And what that means for us as a company is we believe we may own now quite a lot of the IP around the use of ketamine to treat these chronic disorders. We believe we are one of the only companies in the world developing a medicine-based treatment for these disorders that affect hundreds of millions of people. And we believe that puts us at the forefront of an industry focused on developing pharmacological-based treatments for these behavioral addictions that affect so many people and for which there is currently a very poor standard of care.
Got it. Okay, and Anthony, you now have 3 Awakn clinics open throughout Europe, 1 in Oslo, Norway, and 2 in the UK. When can investors expect to begin to see the revenue on the balance sheet coming out of these clinics?
Absolutely happy to, Michael. We have 3 clinics operational. We have 1 in Norway and 2 in the UK. So what we have is we have a small clinics business that enables us to fine-tune the delivery model for our therapeutics before we commercialize those at scale. So each clinic that we operate will generate on average 3 million sterling or 4 million US top line. The revenue that we have from the 3 operational clinics is already on the balance sheet. Our Oslo clinic opened in early Q4 last year. Our first UK clinic opened in late Q4 last year, and our London flagship clinic opened on the 1st of April this year. So the revenue is appearing on the balance sheet for our year-end financials published, and it will appear on all subsequent financials from here on in. So we are a biotechnology company that has a single revenue stream already on its balance sheet in its second financial year, with each clinic that we open up forecast to earn 3 sterling or $4 million top line. And we forecast we will open somewhere between 10 and 20 clinics across the UK and the EU as we get into 2025. So a biotechnology company that has a strong near-term revenue stream capable of, by the time we get into 2025, generating maybe 40 to 50 million US dollars.
Wonderful. Anthony Tennyson, CEO of Awakn Life Sciences. It's been a great look into the future, and obviously congratulations on all of the success you've achieved so far. We're looking forward to seeing what comes next.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to speak to you today and to speak to your audience as well.